Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads with my co-host, Mr. Sean Francis. I am Brian Altunian, and today's conversation is one of our favorite subjects. It's about financial literacy, and why financial literacy is important for caregivers and any family. Financial literacy is important for everybody, but whatever's, as Sean always says, whatever's good for the general public, 10 times for those who are dealing with a special needs issue or concern. So today's conversation is about finances and why it's important and why it matters. So stay tuned for another episode of Just Two Dads. Hello, everybody. I could say good morning since we are recording in the morning. This is Brian Altunian along with Sean Francis, and we are in our fourth season of our Just Two Dads podcast. We started this 4 years. This is a conversation between just two dads, caregiving dads of children with some special needs issue. And we kept encountering amazing people who were doing great work for the special needs community, really representing both caregivers and care receivers. And so today is no exception. We're talking to Danielle Miula. I got it right? And we're ready to get into that. Before we do, I just want to say, if you're catching us, we're recording and dropping our episodes now every Wednesday morning on Facebook and at other podcast outlets as well. So if you're hearing us on any podcast outlet or WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, thanks for making us part of your listening day. If you're seeing us on video on our website or on Facebook or anywhere where you can see video, hopefully you'll be able to see some links up on the page. We'll always drop the links on our show notes. So anything that we post visually, you can access when you look back at the episode. Thank Billy Footwear, does adaptive footwear for people of all sizes, issues, concerns, anybody who has a challenge tying their shoes or just putting their shoes on. And by the way, that packs a lot more people than you think. So we love Billy Footwear. Story of Billy Price, the founder, is fascinating. Go to billyfootwear.com and check him out. Love those people over there, and the work that Billy's doing is really, it's world changing. So love them. I think we covered everything. We'll talk about the men's group that Sean and I co-host every 2 weeks. It's a men's group for caregiving dads. And we have had some really phenomenal meetings lately. The last meeting we got together on Zoom. We do it every 2 weeks on Zoom. We got to spend some time with folks from, first of all, Sean's son, Elijah, which is a treat for me because we don't get to see him enough. But also we had Katie Asher on with her son, Houston. They're subjects of the telepathy tapes, and had a fascinating conversation with dads. And so join us. We'll put the link on our show notes as well. It's free to join. If you're just, dad's looking, or of a dad looking for a place to just be able to vent, talk about the things that are important and the things that dads think about in this kind of environment, join us for the den. All right, that's enough for our intro. We're excited to have Danielle here to talk about financial literacy, and to kick us off, Mr. Sean Francis was dealing with some technical issues earlier, but they seem to have been resolved, which I love. You look fantastic. I love the shirt. That looks like a new shirt to me. Is that new?
No, no, just not seen before. No,
just not seen before. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's a nice shade of blue for those that aren't seeing us. So, all right, Sean, you feeling good? You ready to jump into this with Danielle?
Yeah, especially so because you and I met working in financial services, and we saw a need to craft the answer to questions that everyone has who happens to be a caregiver, whether someone has an autism diagnosis, disability, the aged, whatever the case might be. And we have had discussions, especially during Financial Literacy Month. We've done episodes where we talk about those things, but we've never had a guest on who is also someone of that profession and a caregiver as well. And I'm especially excited for that to take place because we met through a noble opportunity, serving as fellows in the 2024 fellowship program with Caring Across Generations. So our guest today is someone who meets the first qualification for being a hero, which is that's the furthest thing that she thinks that she is. But I'm here to tell you that she is just that. Welcome to Just Two Dads, Danielle Miula.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I was really inspired by your journeys. I got to know Sean's journey through the Carrying Across Generations Fellowship program, and I was like, wow, I got to connect with this guy because
Thank you.
I, we need more people in this profession that are dedicated to helping caregivers and their loved ones or their care
Most
recipients.
definitely, definitely. So, I mentioned earlier, one prerequisite for being a hero is not thinking that you're one, but you are. Heroes have superpowers, and superpowers come from a hero's origin. So let's start with yours, talking about, where and how you were raised, where you're from, not only just, geographically, but spiritually, because that has everything to do with when you set foot into the caregiving community. And I'd love for everyone to hear about that and what led you to where you are, um, right now, especially because in our industry, if you work for someone trying to provide a service for a community, that can be kind of challenging. So it takes something special to venture out on your own to do that. So why don't we start with, where, your beginning and how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking me that question because usually in the financial industry, we just think of financial advisors as these people who just serve the wealthy and that, we must come
Right.
from wealth. And, there's always some type of stereotypical idea of perceived of who we are and what our profession looks like. And having a background story of who we are makes people, I hope it makes people think we're more relatable and more open to life experiences. I grew up in a middle class.
Yeah, I want you to tell us how you grew up. But to that point, I mean, that's what actually makes financial advisors really effective if they can relate, right? Guys, if you can't
Mhm.
relate to your client's situation, you're talking at two different levels, it feels like, right? So, especially if you can relate to the folks, what they're going through. So, sorry to mean to interrupt you, but I'm total agreement with you. So, tell us about your upbringing. That'll help get people to understand
Yes,
who you are.
I grew up in a middle class household. My mom worked as a sales representative for DHL, and my dad worked for Kaiser as a materials manager. My dad worked traditional 9 to 5. My mom was flying internationally constantly to serve clients as a sales representative. So she was very busy, being the boss woman that she is, and wanting to fulfill the needs of the household. Being in an area like the Bay Area, which is extremely expensive to afford a living for a family.
Mhm. And that's Northern California for those who are listening and not familiar with the
The
state.
Bay, the
The
city
Bay
on the
Area.
Bay.
Mhm.
It's the city on the Bay.
Where in the Bay Area, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I grew up in Foster City.
Okay. All right.
It's about 40 minutes, for those who don't know, for about 40 minutes from San Francisco, depending on traffic.
Gotcha. Hmm.
But on a
Right.
nice day, not a cloudy day, it's about 40 to 45 minutes. And so I, uh, as I said, I grew up in this very busy household. Parents both trying to afford a living in an expensive location. And my dad said, why don't we take this job in more of a rural area? Your mom can go from full time to either a stay at home mom or a part time position, and then we can figure out what to go from there because we can afford a living in more of a rural area with only one source of income. So that's what happened. We moved out to the Central Valley, which is about an hour south of Sacramento. My parents bought a house. We moved there. I moved schools, which ended up working really perfectly. Obviously, a different experience to go from a city to a rural area, but it
Sure.
seemed like a really good fit until my mom decided that she was bored and didn't want to be a stay at home mom anymore. And then she decided to go back to work. So that was why I set the context of that story. One, because my parents were very busy working parents. And so someone had to take the place sometimes of a parent. And for me, it was my grandparents. My grandparents were like my second parents. They would go to all my sports events. They would pick me up from school. My principal of my school actually worked for my grandfather at his grocery store. And so he would make fun of me, like, oh, I know who your principal is, kind of thing.
You don't have any siblings, Danielle? You were the only child?
Yeah, I'm an only child.
Got it. Okay.
So I'm building this foundation of my grandparents were my second parents.
Nice.
And that really helped to develop me in who I am today.
And you said, I'm sorry to I keep interrupting you. I know you're on a flow, Brian. Like, Brian, stop interrupting me. But you had mentioned before we signed on today that your Japanese or Japanese culture, your family is Japanese culture, or?
So my family's white.
Okay.
My great grandparents immigrated from Croatia.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not to go on a side tangent, but my grandparents pretty much met each other in the United States. They hadn't met each other in person at all. They just wrote letters back and forth, met each other on the first day, and got married.
Yeah. Wow. Holy cow.
Like, what a story to tell, huh?
I was wrong. There's no Japanese then in your background?
My husband's Japanese.
Oh, got it. Oh, okay. Well, so I was partially right. Okay, good. The only reason I bring it up is because in the Japanese culture, being raised by grandparents is actually normal, right? Grandparent involvement in, their grandchildren's lives is that's a part of that culture. It makes a lot of sense. I was just trying to connect the dots there. So, and I haven't spent as much time with you as Sean has, so this is all new for me. So I'm filling in the holes. So.
Oh, I appreciate filling the holes. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So to kind of fast forward the story, during COVID, my husband and I were living in LA, and he was working remotely at the time. And we were in a 500 square foot place that was lovely, but very small for LA living. And rent was high, mostly because it was also located near the beach. And we decided that maybe we change our lifestyle. And since he's working remotely, let's move closer to home. And within moving back to the rural area that I discussed earlier. And about a month later, my grandmother fell and broke her hip. And I always say it's the fall that changed my life, because that day was my first day as a family caregiver, whether I knew it or not.
Yeah. How long ago was that?
That was, feels so long ago, but it wasn't. It was, I think, February of 2021.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, 2021 was last week, yet a decade ago. If you just think of COVID itself, we're 5 years post-COVID, and that sounds so weird to say.
Yeah.
Amazing. As I cough, I should probably mute myself when I cough. Sorry. Yeah, it is amazing how fast that time has flown by post-COVID.
Yeah, but go ahead.
So I'm sure you have your own stories regarding this, but I didn't realize I was a family caregiver at all. I didn't associate the idea of it. It was just repaying back the love that I'd received from my grandparents growing up. The chicken, rice, and string bean meals that she made for me because she thought I liked it, so she just always made it. Which I secretly think she liked it because my grandmother always liked cheap meals, and that seemed like a perfect combination of a cheap meal. But if I could repay some of that love, then I felt like I was doing my job as a family member. And so I didn't connect the two at all.
And where were your parents at this time?
My parents were living near us because we were all in the same city. Mm-hmm. But my mom was the power of attorney, and she also has her own health issues. So, as you know, sometimes fulfilling the full caregiving role plus having your own medical issues of your own can be difficult. And so
Right.
she asked me to assist her in the caregiving role. So we were a caregiving team. We were two superwomen, as you're talking about superheroes, trying to caregive for an 88-year-old woman.
Wow. So in terms of chronology, you're kind of jumping around here. At least I'm going to have us doing so. But so you're in this caregiving role. Let's step back a little and tell us what led you to financial services and put you in a position to even administer care from that perspective.
Yeah, so I was a former sandwich generation caregiver. I am a mom to a now 6-year-old, which feels crazy. But when she was a baby, when she was actually 100 days old, we talked, my husband and I, and we said, we got to get our grassroots down together. We got to figure out what life we want financially, what our goals are, and how to put those in place. And so we started our version of financial planning at that time because we didn't know what financial planning was. So we were just learning as we go, just DIYing everything. And my husband has a business degree, and he thought very highly of the certified financial planning program. And he asked me, do you want to go through the educational program and check it out and see how it is? We can pay for the tuition, and if you don't take the first class, if you just really don't like it, you don't have to take any more classes. And so I took the first class with the hope, not knowing what I was gonna, if I was gonna like it or not. And I took the first class and loved it. And from there on, I grew a love for finances. Finances to me, money to me is a very stressful topic, as it is for many women.
Yeah.
And so going into the financial industry was something that was probably not really heard of in my position. I have a psychology degree with a criminology background. I was working in the financial crimes unit for the police department. I was working with a lot of victims.
That was my next question.
Yeah, I was also working. I was working with both sectors. So I was working with victims as well as I was working with criminals who were previous offenders in different parts of the criminal justice system. And so I thought I would probably stay in that sector. I didn't think that finances was something I was interested in.
When you discovered that it was, and you began to get your certification, was your thought, hey, we're going to launch and start a firm and I'm going to be, 1099 self-employed? Or were you thinking about going to get a job someplace?
I was thinking about getting a job full time. I really wanted someplace that was going to mentor me and excel my knowledge and experience. Unfortunately, due to caregiving and how large that role played, having a full-time position was not doable for me.
Right.
And so I felt I would feel terrible if I started a job and then said, okay, I need to take 3 days a week off because I can't come into work and it's randomly.
Yeah.
So I didn't think that was doable or even respectful of an employer to put them through that.
Got it. So you have your own business as a financial planner now, right? Is that Spark Financial? Is that what that's your company, correct?
Yeah, so I started a financial planning firm. I'm registered in the state of California, but I can help people nationwide. And I started the firm, and it's called Spark Financials. I specialize in helping family caregivers. It's kind of ironic that we're talking about this podcast on Financial Literacy Month, and that we have 3 financial planners on a podcast. That's usually very rare. So,
and 3 caregivers at that, right?
And on top of it, 3 caregivers. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's jump into that then, because we always have our opinion as to, how we were trained and our experience and what's first, what's in order, and everything. It's very interesting to see what someone else's approach is. So let's say someone is a caregiver. They have either an elderly relative or a child with a disability that they are caring for. They have just faced the fact that, as you stated, once you step into that role, full-time employment is a challenge. So let's look at someone that's, getting by, thinking about today, but thinking enough about tomorrow to try and plan for the future. And they sit down with you. Do you charge for a consultation? Where do you start? What's your process like? And what is the first step that you think caregiving families should take in order to increase their financial literacy and secure the future?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, but I'm going to try to break it down. So the first is what was the first question? How to get resources?
Well, no, I guess where you start when someone comes to you. Let's say a family comes to you, they're new to caregiving, but been at it long enough to realize that they need to think about planning for their future. And of course, what you suggest is going to be dependent upon what their biggest concerns are. But in an average situation, where do you kind of start with them, and what's your process like?
So for me, which I guess this is a controversial topic, I don't think you need to label yourself as a family caregiver, but I feel like you need to understand what your job description looks like. It's like performing a duty every single day at an employer, but you don't know what the frick you're doing. You don't know what the job description is. You're just sitting there. Maybe that's what you're doing on purpose. Maybe you're just sitting behind a computer screen and just hoping that emails come through and you don't have to answer them.
Yeah, all those people I know a bunch of those people that we just described. Yeah, so people have no idea what they're doing, and then they get promoted. That's always my favorite.
Isn't that the funny part? Yeah.
Yeah. I'll try to keep my laughter to myself, but that's exactly. I understand that feeling. So keep going. This is fast.
But usually, for most case caregivers are not like that. Usually, they go head in first and try to do the best they can. But without a job description, you're pretty much going into something, a dark hole that you have no way of getting out of. So if you're not someone who wants to be labeled as a family caregiver, then at least say, these are my duties. These are what I've been doing for my care recipient. How can I protect myself in the future so that I know how to dig myself out of the hole? So for example, if I'm taking out savings for my retirement because I'm currently not having a full-time job like I was dipping into savings, how can I replenish that savings in the future so that I can make myself whole?
Right. And so say someone comes to you with that question, then where do you start with them? First place that you would guide them then?
So I'm curious to hear your both responses about it, but my two big things when looking for a financial planner or someone in the financial services industry is, what are you looking for? Because many people don't know what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. Many people just meet with a financial planner and go, I just want you to help me figure out what to do with my investments. Okay, yeah, I can help you with that. But what kind of service do you want? Do you want someone who's going to be there that you can call or email whenever they're available? Are you wanting someone that's an hourly service that you only need a couple things and that's it? Do you want someone that is going to manage your investments but not look at the other aspects of your life? Do you want someone who's going to help with debt management? Do you want someone who's going to see future tax planning or do your tax preparation? Those are all different types of professionals. So the first thing I would think is create a list of duties that you want someone to do for you. What can you offload to somebody else? And that will determine what kind of professional you're looking for. And then the second thing when you're looking for someone is, who can you trust? Because our industry, as I hate to say it, is full of bad apples.
Yep.
And I love to say we're all angels, but that's not the case.
No, it's a human experience. That's exactly right. And for us, we take a holistic approach. So we'll give maybe some education on various aspects, which will educate someone and then maybe get them to thinking so that they're in a better position to answer the following question, which is, if I could relieve the biggest financial worry for you, what would that be? What's important to you? I'm here to address what you need, but just as important, what it is that you want, not just what I think you should have. And that's kind of where we,
Well,
go.
that, and a lot of people, I think, have a misconception of what a financial planner is and what they actually do. Most people think the first thing you said was help me manage my investments. Some people are like, I'm not even thinking about investments at the moment. I'm just trying to think about how do I manage my financial life and the things that are going to come at me and what do I need to be prepared for? In fact, we've had some people say to us, I don't have any money to work with you. I'm like, well, I don't know what you think you need to have, but our goal is to help you, put your financial house in order so that you can have money to work with anybody. But whatever your misconceptions are, preconceptions are of what a financial planner are, that usually is, all those things that you listed, Danielle. I don't think people even know to ask the questions, right? Or they know they don't even know what to do. So I think being able to say, like, what we generally do when we sit down with folks, is say, let's describe your situation. And more importantly, if money's not an object, what are the kinds of things in your life that you would like to have? And what are you doing today to get to those points, right? To put those things in order, your goals and your dreams. And, how can we help you fill the hole so that you can get there? And including all of those things, the pitfalls, the challenges that you may encounter, like you're in a caregiver position. And so a 9-to-5 job doesn't work for you. And so you've got to sort of figure out how you navigate waters, around income and, getting out of debt and all those other things. Right. So we try to lay it out like, listen, let's get rid of all your preconceived notions of what a financial planner is. We can help you do all of this stuff, but let's figure out where you are now and what you'd like to do and what you'd like to provide for it. Do you have aging parents? Do you have children you need to pay for their education? All of those kinds of things, anything that's going to require finances, they all fall under our purview, right? And so we can do all of that. And it's not here's the interesting thing. Now I'm on a ramble. Sean and I joke about the fact that one of us or the other is going to ramble at some point. So
it's a good ramble. It's okay. You're good.
Yeah, I'll just say most of the big box companies, the financial management companies, financial planning companies, they generally have a cookie cutter solution for everybody. Mm-hmm. They put everybody into a cookie cutter, program, and then they talk to them, maybe send out a quarterly statement, and maybe talk to them once a year. But that's impossible, in my opinion. It's maybe scalable for them, but it doesn't serve most people because every situation is completely individual, and it should be an individualized program that they're in, where they're constantly getting feedback on, are you hitting your mark? Is something else coming out? I just had clients who just told me yesterday that that they're getting a divorce. They have 3 kids, and that their situation has completely changed from what it was a year ago when we started working together. And those are the kind of things that happen. A cookie cutter solution doesn't solve that. So I love what you're saying. And again, letting people know that, like, it's more important of how are you living your life? What are your challenges? What would you like to go? And how can we help you get there? That's usually the plan that we take. I'm assuming that you take a similar approach. Yes?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of financial planners, well, a lot of people don't read contracts. And so they don't really ask questions. They don't know what they're getting themselves into. They may think, because it's like in the financial industry, there's like certain words we use, right? It's like holistic, comprehensive, financial planning. But when you break down those words, what do those words really mean? And that's what's really important for the consumer to find out. Does holistic mean I'm just going to talk about 2 topics out of the financial plan? So I'm just going to talk about retirement and tax planning, or I'm just going to talk about special needs planning and debt management? Or does that mean I'm looking at everything? Because if we're talking about retirement planning, I easily could brush up on 4 or 5 different topics. When we're talking about retirement planning, we're talking about tax planning. We're probably talking about debt management because you probably want to get rid of your mortgage. We're talking about Social Security planning. There's no way that I can do retirement planning without looking at those other aspects. I don't want something that is just going to be printed off from a financial planning software and just put on your bookshelf and you're never going to see it again. That's why it's, instead of financial plan, it's an action term with an ing at the end. So financial planning, we're constantly, which I'm sure you both do as well, is we're constantly adjusting and adapting your plan so that it fits your needs.
Right, and that falls in line with, and that's for anybody that's listening too. If you're sitting down with someone that is going to hopefully be with you as life changes come about, because the things that are important to you today, outside of some of the basics, those things can change as life situations change. You get married, you get divorced, one of your children gets married or gets divorced, you become a parent, you become a grandparent, you downsize, you expand. Everybody's situation is very different. So that's one of the things that's most important. If you can, let's talk about why. Let's take the obvious that might not be obvious, which is why literacy planning and tools and strategies are more important to the caregiving or special needs community than the general public.
I put together a video series for Family Caregiving Month talking about the financial toll of caregiving, because these topics often don't get talked about. Many people don't understand the impact of caring for a special needs child, nor do people plan, when you're having a child, plan for all the things that may happen. And we're not just talking about Sally fell off a tree and broke her leg or something. Having a child is expensive. And not planning for unexpected events or diagnoses is very difficult. So I'm sure when you think about, like when I was having a child, it was just like, where am I going to give birth? and for us, that was the decision to give birth in Japan because we thought that was easier for us. But for many people, that's the first thing they're thinking about. Where do I give birth, and what is my labor plan? But for me, it's like probably about 10 or 12 things that I go through the list now, because having a child is more than just giving birth, unfortunately, these days.
Yeah. And experience is what teaches us. I'm part of this show, the profession that we're in, fellowship experience, being on the, serving on the Autism Parents Advisory Board, Children's Hospital of LA, all these type of things that have you kind of quote unquote in the know. You think you know so much, which I might, but there's so much more to learn and know. With all these things, we just had an interesting experience where a couple days ago, there was a piece of mail that came here from the federal government addressed to our son, who is 18, and it was from Selective Service. I'm like, Selective Service? I haven't even thought of that since I was 18 myself. And for those that are, we can talk about that another time, but I found out, the answer to a question which I hadn't thought of before. Wait a minute, if one is on the autism spectrum, do they need to register for Selective Service? So just like you might not be thinking of those things, there's all these other things that come into play that kind of don't enter your mind until you're facing them, either as a parent or a caregiver.
That's interesting. I didn't think about. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah. And to that point, and Danielle, to your point you're making earlier, you when you think about like getting married, the first time, most people are focused on the wedding, to your point, right? Most people are focused on the wedding and having the wedding and forget that after that wedding, there's a whole life that you've got to plan for, right? So same kind of concept.
And that goes back to what we said before, is we can educate ourselves as much as possible. I can spend hours and hours in research, go on Yahoo Finance or Go Banking Rates and read a bunch of articles. I can go through as much education courses as possible because there's so many nowadays. But it's important to have someone in that wheelhouse that has your back.
For sure.
Yeah.
that can help you brainstorm ideas, that can be a partner in your finances, because there might be many holes that you're missing that you don't realize.
For sure. And as Sean was saying, like, you could be well versed in something, but somebody who's got expertise in, let's say, real estate, or understanding some of the rules around real estate could have a massive impact on you. You almost have to be like, you have to be an expert in every one of these areas in order to be able to navigate these waters, as opposed to having a financial advisor. I've been in this field for a long time, and one of my partners was talking to a client and mentioned something about, accelerated depreciation and what you could do when you're acquiring some real estate with accelerated depreciation, and how that all plays in, and depending on what state you're buying property. I thought, I'm in the financial management world, and that was a new bit of news for me, right? So even if I would say with the internet, we have access to more information now than we ever have before, and yet we know less than we ever have, because it's almost too much, right? And so for somebody, and you could have your whole situation planned, and then you get a diagnosis, and it changes your entire world. And so being a caregiver, a financial advisor that has caregiving experience, that's something that is really unique, because the three of us here, we understand what it's like to be a parent who gets a diagnosis for our child. We understand the impact that has on our financial life. And then if a divorce is thrown in there, like, we understand how that piece comes into play. So yes, we're top. It's like we're all priests speaking the same language to each other.
To the same choir, yeah. Well, so what's important, obviously, we talked about there's always something new to learn. So having trusted relationships with trusted experts in an area of the field that you might not know is crucial, which is why we have relationships with people that specialize in conservatorships, that other people that specialize in special needs trust, and not just estate plans. On the subject of trust, how do you go about building the highest level of trust that you can with your clients when someone comes to you?
Yeah, trust, I feel like, is one of those terms where it's built over time. Many people think that trust can be built really quickly. I guess for some people it can be, but for me, especially, I think in caregivers in general, our walls we're in a vulnerable place.
Yes.
We've been put in positions that we wouldn't normally feel comfortable with. And so having a trusting relationship with someone is really difficult. It evolves over time, it changes. We're constantly adjusting that relationship to really determine if we can really trust that person. Do they do what we asked? Do they fulfill those duties? So if I were someone looking for a financial professional and trying to build that trusting relationship with them, I would see if you can have multiple meetings with them before you start an engagement with them. See if there's a friend, maybe a friend of a friend knows a financial advisor, someone you can adapt and adjust to trust. See if they specialize in caregiving, if they understand your caregiving experiences. Can they relate to you? Because if you don't have compatibility, you might as well stop the relationship there. If you're not in a likable, friendly relationship, if they're not going to meet the quotas that you're asking for, if, for example, you've asked them to lay out your spending plan and it's due this day and they have not fulfilled that duty, then under certain circumstances, of course, there's no flexibility. But if they're not saying what they're going to do, then that might be a questionable relationship.
Most
because
definitely.
As family caregivers, we don't have time to be around the bush. We don't have time to email someone constantly to find a solution. We need the solution now.
Yeah, and you have to make sure that person is someone who puts people over profits and understands that they will get their profit by putting people first. And sometimes putting someone first even means walking away. I had an experience recently for the first time in almost 19 years in this industry. I quote unquote fired a client. That sounds bad because you're kind of like, I don't like you and I can't help you. Not that this is somebody that quite frankly needed what was offered and everything, but it was in their best interest as well as my own to simply step away, wish them the very best, and know that you could, offer what you might have, from a distance as well. Because the other thing that people stop at, most people think about, we talk about what people think of when they think of a financial professional. They usually think of someone who serves the wealthy, charges a fee that is usually exorbitant just for their time, and they're looking to help wealthy people kind of leave everybody else behind. And as a result of everything else that we just talked about, the client has to be very careful in making their choice and finding someone that they can trust. But there's a certain amount of trust that an advisor has to have in the person that they're going to serve as well. Because, when you're advising someone and you put their best interest first, you need to know that you're going to be able to work together too and work as a team. And that doesn't always happen because we're all the sum total of our experience too. So some people, just based on their experience, maybe they've been burned, and so they don't necessarily trust. And what happens is sometimes that makes a person not the most trustworthy. And it's not always the advisor who has an absence of trust. And then by the same token, as opposed to, I'm mad, I can't trust that client because they won't, they're not forthcoming or whatever the case might be. We have to understand and be a little empathetic and understand that maybe they're just not ready to do that too. And that happens also, but that's not something you hear most people talk about.
Yeah, it can be as simple as going back to the basics of, is this person really listening to me?
Right.
Is this person just having my words go through one ear and out through the other, or are they really processing what I have to say?
Yeah, and it's not always about them being, depending on our own experience, maybe we'd be quick to say, that's a bad person because they didn't listen to me. That might be just where that person is. So the empathy really goes, a long way. And empathy doesn't have to mean that you feel sorry for someone or look down upon them. You just understand that they can't necessarily meet you halfway, whether you're the client or the advisor. And again, anything that applies to the general population applies to our community tenfold.
I'm curious to hear your responses about what you wish you learned when you started your caregiving experience related to financial topics.
Well, there's a variety of them, which is that, I grew up with a general fear of like death, right? So there's a certain amount of life that I didn't take seriously. And I now have the deepest, immeasurable appreciation for what my father tried to pass on to me, which is, you're not going to be here forever. I'm not going to be here forever. You're closer to dying every day. I was like, dude, I am trying to watch Scooby-Doo. I'm 10. This is just, hold on. But there's so much value in that because just the value of time itself. We're never going to be as young as we were when I just began the sentence. Ever, ever. And so acceptance of that plays a great role because it also means that you're not trying to chase things and redo the past. The only thing you can do anything about is, right this very moment. And so the sooner that one accepts that, the sooner one is also willing to have the conversation about money, which is very difficult and is 10 times more difficult as a caregiver, especially the aspect of, life insurance. So I think the biggest thing is just, if you understand the value of time and understand that we are the only thing on the planet as human beings that is as valuable as time itself. Once you understand that, then it supersedes everything else, and everything else, can fall into place. Because I know there's people that are going to be hearing this that are like, yeah, some valuable stuff, but I just don't know about this. As we're sitting here, I had a prompt pop up on my iPad for a podcast. Don't even know what the podcast was, but I wrote down the title because what it says is, I don't have the time is the biggest lie you tell yourself. And that's the truth. Everybody's got the same amount of 24 hours. It's about what you make time for. And so, when my wife and I first started dating, she talked about, life insurance is something that's really important. Like, of course it is. Sure. I want to talk about that then because there's a component of death there. But because we can't do anything about the fact that time is continuing to move, it's as simple, maybe not easy, but as simple as it is important. And that's what I wish I knew and what I could convey to people.
It's interesting. I got a prompt popped up too, but it said today's National Burrito Day, so slightly different than I think what you saw. Sean. But
it's all nourishment, though. It's
yeah,
all
right. It's all
nourishment.
right.
Yeah.
I was going to share. My folks never talked about money. In fact, I think they went opposite. Like, I remember asking my dad. This is a while ago. I'm 61.
I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to say, tell what you can of that, because what I find fascinating about that, and I've never said this to you before, is that Brian's parents had means. They were hard workers and they had a successful business. So for them to have that but not talk about it,
it's wild.
That's another thing. So people don't think that's not odd.
For sure. This is why. So when I was a teenager, I had said to my dad, I'm like, hey, is it possible? Can we get a phone extension in our room so I don't have to run downstairs every time I get a phone call? Right. This is where you shared home lines. This is how long ago it was. It wasn't, a dial like stick in your ear kind of thing, but it was pretty close. And he said to me, no, what do you think? You think we're rich? Everybody has a phone extension in their phone. That's the strangest thing I'd ever seen. And I had said to him, and by the way, they owned apartment buildings and real estate, income properties. They were both entrepreneurs, both very, very successful. And they never talked about money. And I said, I don't understand why you don't tell us about everything that you've got lined up. My dad's response was, you'll know about it when you're my caregiver. Well, until then, it's none of your business. By the way, I worked for my dad in his grocery store for 18 years of my life. And he never ever really explained how to take care of money. And so when I grew up, I didn't really understand how to take care of money. I had it and I had a lot of it and I didn't know how to take care of it. So I spent it because I didn't really know about investing and putting aside for the future, because my folks would never talk about it, would never give us advice. By the way, when we became adults and had our own families, then it became a thing where he would say things like, you should buy bonds. They're the safest investment. I'm like, that's all the financial advice you're gonna give me? That doesn't, I've already moved on beyond that. So for me growing up, I believe today that it's really important for parents to share with their children what's happening financially and what the goal is for the family from a financial perspective. So everybody's contributing to the overall goal of the company as the kids get to be of working age and contributing and whatnot, right? So they're not always asking, hey, can I have $20 for this and $40 for this? And things are much more expensive today than they ever were, right? So having a conversation about money in the family gets everybody aligned and on the same page. So when parents say, no, I'm not paying for that, kids aren't just left to their own imagination of why that's a no. They're understanding, exactly. Oh, well, $6.50 for a venti, flavored drink at Starbucks, of which they only drink half of it and throw it away, doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So
and context. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're 100% right. Context matters here. It's no, we're saving money so we can go have lattes in Italy together, not at the Starbucks every day.
There you go. Right? Because then the other end of the spectrum is where it's gloom and doom, because what they tell you is, see this? Do you know how much that costs? Your money doesn't grow on trees,
Right.
So then you have this scarcity mindset, and you're not, and so that doesn't encourage you to talk about it at all. So it goes both ways. So it's not just about having the conversation, it's about having a purposeful conversation that will empower somebody. And it's interesting because when you talk about, Danielle began by asking what you might tell, a client, but that goes back to so much of what we talk about. It's so much more psychological than anything else. We always talk about, how as children, we are as close to perfection as we're going to be. So you have an opportunity there to make such a big difference. There's a difference that's made when you're sitting with, a trusted, skilled advisor and everything. But there's a bigger difference that's made at home when the right conversation is had at a certain time. I think that carries even more weight. And that's the type of thing we'd love to change, generally speaking, but especially in our community.
Yeah, we don't need to keep conversations behind locked doors anymore. We can be open about money conversations. Maybe that's a topic for, if you allow me to come back on, we can talk about estate planning and having conversations around money, because it is so hard for people to have conversations about money, and it's such a shame because we can learn so much through each other by talking about money.
even basics like making sure that your kids are beneficiaries of your bank accounts and your investment accounts. Most of the time it happens, but even like most banks don't even give you a beneficiary form to fill out. And yet if you pass away and your child's not on your account and you don't have a beneficiary form, it takes
Locked
forever
up.
to get access to that money. And you have to, even just showing a death certificate is not enough. And that's just a basic instruction I tell people. Put your adult children, have to be over 18, adult children as beneficiaries, at the very least, as beneficiaries on all of your accounts. So it's
And you know what it is too? We talk about raising your consciousness all the time. Think about what it is you think about. So, everyone's familiar with the 5 love languages, right? There's acts of kindness, acts of service, acts of affection, those types of things. And how you were raised, the home in which you were raised, the language of love, which is shown between your parents, is how you were taught. That's your example. Well, one of the things that we do as we, give presentations, whether you're sitting with a client or presenting to a group, is we talk about what a person's money language is, because that determines how you see it. There's the person that's the spender. There's the person that just doesn't want to talk about it at all. There's a person that's the saver. Then there's a person that's the investor. And the language that we have with relation to those things is constituted by the manner in which we were raised. What's the example that we were given? Because as children, we don't learn what we're told. We learn what we see. And again, just like anything else, that's important to the general population. You tack caregiver onto that, and that stuff becomes 10 times more important, at least.
And 10 times sometimes messier too.
Yes, most definitely.
Special needs trust and all the other extra stuff that comes with it. Absolutely. And Danielle, we'd love to have you back to talk about estate planning. And this, unfortunately, this episode is coming to an end here as we start to close this out. So I'm going to throw it over to Sean to ask you the question that we ask everybody at this point. Sean, you want to ask Danielle the question?
I sure do. I want to thank her for her time. And it's always, It goes by so fast, and we're looking forward to it. And I also want to take the time to personally thank her for responding. I made shared a post on social media where we have a campaign that's going for Autism Awareness and Financial Literacy Month. She did a very simple thing. Danielle just responded and said, I'm looking forward to these posts. And, I had call to action asking people to pay attention, take a like, and ask questions and that sort of thing. So I want to thank you for that, and also thank you for your time here today. Thank you so very much. And this is the portion of the show where we will generally ask the question, which is, our ability to change the world is based on our ability, or at least our willingness, to change ourselves. So with that said, give us just one example of a thought or a belief that you once believed strongly, but no longer believe to be true.
So this might be controversial, but in my depiction, it's you don't have to wear all the hats. You don't have to be the superwoman taking over everything. Eventually, some hat is going to drop. In my caregiving experience, that's what happened to me, is a caregiving hat dropped, and that was my health. So if I'm thinking about my perceived notion is ask for help, be willing to receive help, and understand that you don't have to be the superwoman. You don't have to be the hero.
Let me ask you this. What I need to stop doing that. I just realized looking at I've had this habit. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you. But I do want to ask you, what is it about that? Because it makes so much sense to me, but I'm curious as to why you think that perspective might be controversial.
Because I think people don't always, you said like at the beginning of the podcast about like how I am a hero. And that's something that in my head I was thinking, well, yes, I am a hero, but yet I was a cape that was flying, but wasn't going anywhere.
Gotcha.
And so
I understand that completely.
direction. I didn't know how to delegate things. To be a hero, you sometimes have to let things go. You have to delegate things. You have to outsource things.
Right. All heroes have sidekicks and even people in the community that they work with. Thank you so very much for your time today. I just want to thank everyone within the sound of my voice that has taken the time to tune in today, everyone that's been supporting us for coming up on the 200th episode. Remember, they say that misery loves company, which might be true, but so does joy, right? Let's try and be more childlike, let's childish. And to everyone within the sound of my voice, if you're listening, we love you. And remember, you're not alone. You're one of us. Thank you so much.
That's the first time in almost 200 episodes that you've actually closed out before I closed out. Just so you know.
That's true. That's true.
Changing things up, man. We're changing the world. I'm just going to add one thing: empathy and love. That's my thing. Empathy and love. Empathy. You never know what somebody's going through, so be empathetic. Share your empathy. You don't know what somebody else is dealing with in their life, and look at the world through the lenses of love. We talk about love here all the time. Sean, I truly, we love each other. We love the work that we're doing. We love our guests. We love our audience. We love everything that we're doing. And I will tell you, the world's a much better place when we look through the lenses of love. So thank you, everybody. Danielle, thanks for your time. It was great to share with you.
Thank you. That was fun.
Good. Good. See you guys soon. Next week, another episode of Just Two Dads dropping here soon.